It is possible that when the history books are written about Nigeria's battle with insecurity, this past week will be more than a footnote. And that's because they're calling it President Tinubu's Chibok moment, the recent mass abduction by suspected terrorists of somewhere between 24 and 30 students from the Federal University in Gusau, Zamfara State, barely a week ago, part of the kidnap for ransom franchise that's growing every day across Nigeria. According to the authorities, 13 of the victims have been rescued, although some reports suggest that only 7 have regained their freedom and at least 2 of them reportedly escaped on their own. Either way, it's clear that the challenge of insecurity continues to pose a big threat in this country. Meanwhile, questions are being asked about whether the federal government is locked in negotiations with the kidnappers and whether ransom is being paid. And how is it that bandits and criminals now seem to make the rules in Nigeria? Why can't they be hunted down and defeated? What hope is there that the storm will subside anytime soon? What should be on the table to tackle this blight? Well, for more on all that, I'm joined now in the studio by the former secretary to the Chief of Defense Staff's committee that negotiated the release of the last batch of trained hostages, Professor Usman Yusuf, who is also a noted public policy expert. Prof, thank you very much indeed for coming in. Good to see you again. It's been a while.
You look rested.
Well, you look rested as well. I wonder where you've been.
Around Kubwa.
I like that. How do you see what has happened with this latest round of hostage taking?
Right. Charles, I'm saddened, like every parent should be. In Nigeria, we are, in the next 2 days, we'll be celebrating 63 years. There'll be soldiers, there'll be parade. Our children, this is their 7th or 8th day in the forest with the bad guys. This is 9.5 years after Chibok, the first mass school abduction in this country. So the government and security agencies, we've not learned a thing in 9.5 years. In 9.5 years, we are where we are. Many school abductions after the Buniadi massacre. You have Chibok, you have Dapchi, you have Kankara, you have Jangebe, you have Kagara, you have Bethel, you have Greenfield. Government has not learned a thing. Security agencies have not learned a thing. We, as parents, we send our children to school to learn. And our children cannot learn in school in a region where education is more in peril now than ever before. And everybody is quiet, as if there's nothing. This is sad. I'm really saddened. I have my friends in the United States calling and asking me. We are back to 9.5 years after Chibok. We're still seeing this. Government has not learned a thing. Security agencies have not learned a thing. And I'm really, really saddened as a parent and as a Nigerian.
But of course, you know about these things, having served as the secretary, as I mentioned, to the Chief of Defense Staff's committee that negotiated the release of the last batch of trained hostages. That suggests that, and I don't know what your take is on that, that some measure of negotiation is necessary in order to try and cut back on these things, certainly get the ones who are taken released immediately, and then cut back on the frequency of these kidnaps. I mean, why, in your assessment, can't these bandits and terrorists and criminals be defeated?
Good. And if I tell you there's one answer, I will be lying. But I've said it again and again and again and again. Banditry, although there's a role for the military, there's not going to be a military solution. Because conflicts like this all over the world have never been won on the battlefield. There has to be a combination of the kinetic and the akinetic. And we saw that during the CDSAC. It was the military that gave us cover to do what we did. The role of the military is to provide an enabling environment for sincere dialogue to take place.
But you must have taken some lessons from that interaction.
A lot of lessons.
And are those lessons communicated to the government?
Absolutely. And even after the release of all the trained hostages, our deed wasn't done. We didn't go home and sleep. We continued engaging them, and this was largely what is responsible for the lull and the quietness you see over the years, that you can drive safely and you can go on a train safely. The whole idea, we reached a point where there was a signed formal agreement of temporary cessation of hostilities.
And what did you offer them to achieve that?
Temporary cessation of hostilities and security of all this, our corridor. And the plan is to extend that temporary cessation to all conflict zones in the north and achieve permanent cessation. Well, the government changed and new players came in, and apparently they didn't read the handing over note. They want to reinvent the wheel. And reinvention of this wheel is what brought this abduction.
And that's always been part of the problem, isn't it? Lack of continuity in government.
Lack of continuity. And the ascending negotiators into Zamfara. I mean, tons of negotiators from God knows where, that the governor had to protest. That people are coming into my state, going into the forest, engaging bandits without talking to me, which is wrong. And the Minister of Information came out and said, no, the federal government had the right to do that. No, he doesn't know what he's talking about.
But I mean, Zamfara, and again, you know about these things. I mean, Zamfara is, of course, the home of the home state of the Minister of State for Defense, Bello Matawalle, who is also the immediate past governor of the state. Does that make it all the more worrying? I mean, there is talk of animosity with the current PDP governor who defeated Matawalle in the election. And I wonder how that might affect the security in the state.
All right, good. I mean, and I talk about Zamfara a lot. Zamfara is near and dear to me. That's where I spent my formative years. That's where I spent secondary school, from 1972 to 76, government secondary school, Gusau. The Zamfara of then is not the Zamfara of today. Essentially, Zamfara is the nidus of banditry. It has infected the whole of the north. Over 70% of bandits have their address back in Zamfara, have their roots back in Zamfara. If you do not solve the problem in Zamfara, you are not going to solve banditry. Primarily, the biggest problem is the bad politics in Zamfara. From day one, Zamfara has never been lucky. It's the bad politics and the animosity between the gladiators that is responsible for all of this. And now, recently, the last governor was summarily defeated by the current governor, who is a PDP guy, and he was made the defeated governor